Hey guys and gals, it's Dr. Marcy, and as you know, I am a no-nonsense health coach who specializes in functional medicine and also chronic pain and chronic illnesses. And one of the things I know is that most of us have a problem somewhere in our body because we haven't been trained how to properly address it, and we're not looking at the right factors. So what I want to do today is talk to you about how you can detox your life in a modern world, because it's crazy. And one of the things that we have to remember is that obesity can cause other health issues. Regardless of what you think about it, it can cause other health issues. But one person's skinny is not going to look like someone else's, partly because of bone size. The skeleton can vary by up to 9%. So you may have somebody with a really small skeleton that should be carrying less weight, and someone with a larger skeleton, 9% larger. And if you think about 10%, that can be really a lot. Who's going to carry at the same height slightly more weight, partly because of bone density, but there's still a healthy range for that. And what we're looking at is how that plays a role in their overall health in terms of their waist size compared to their hip size. The waist should be smaller than the hips, even in men, but the ratio for men's waist to their hips versus the ratio for women's waist to their hips is different, and we do have to take that into account. Functionality. Can you easily move on a daily basis and do exactly what you want to do with no pain and without getting short of breath? Your genetics. What parts of your body, based on your blueprint, need the most support? And how do we support that in the environment that you live in, not the environment that I live in, and within your budget? How do we make that all happen? Obviously, our mental health plays a huge role, but what I'm going to tell you is that your gut produces most of the neurotransmitters needed for proper mental health. End of story. And that can be argued, but research all the way back to 1997 shows that serotonin and dopamine both, most of it is produced in the gut. And then what contribution do you provide to others? What are you doing in this life that's helping you live your absolute best life and helping those around you live a best life? What I know is that this can be super hard or it can be super easy. And honestly, I've been on the super hard path until 2020. So in 2009, I was a top performing athlete in both triathlon and US Master Swimming. I was literally ranked in the top 20% and the top 10% in both sports at my distances. And I was about 112 pounds. I looked great. I was performing at the top of my game. In 2010, I went on bed rest for 25 weeks while carrying my twins. I almost lost them twice. And I was on more medication during that pregnancy than I've ever been on in my life combined. In 2011, when they were 10 months old, I opened my own physical therapy and wellness practice, and I was doing okay, but I could tell that something was not right. By 2014, I had severe joint pain, particularly in my low back and my hips, and I was struggling to get out of bed every day. And in 2015, I actually developed a tumor on the bottom of my foot, and it was my third round of cancer. But I was able to treat it naturally. This led me to want to figure out how to help myself. And then by 2017, I was like, nope, I've got to help other people because they're getting treated just how I was treated, which was mismanagement. And in some cases, I actually think malpractice. So I completed my functional medicine certification. I was able to get rid of my joint pain, but I was still hanging on to some extra weight that I didn't want to hang on to. And even though I was doing all the right things, I couldn't get rid of it. In 2020, finally started looking at the genetics and dropped 32 pounds in 6 weeks easily while not starving myself. So I know it's possible, but this whole process from 2010 to 2020 took literally 6 years and $100,000 to figure out. I don't want it to take that long for you, and we can solve it so much more simply, so much quicker. So we know that we have to look at how your body is draining, and that includes all types of elimination. So how many bowel movements are you having a day? How often do you use the facilities to urinate? And how often are you sweating? Those all matter. And whether or not you get swelling in your feet and ankles every day. How much sleep are you getting? It really does make a huge difference. The research says 7 to 9 hours. I'm going to say that 6.5 to 10 is where most people fall. Obviously, the genetics that are actionable and you can make changes on based on your environment, your nutrition, and how much you move make a huge difference. And movement is key. But that movement doesn't need to be strenuous and intense for most people. For most people, they can get away with doing a walk for an hour a day, broken up into 10-minute intervals. And supplementation. Our goal is not to have you on supplements for life unless they are ones that are going to support your genetics, but supplements for short periods of time to correct imbalances in your body. We also need to work on the mindset, and we need to really focus on conquering your limiting beliefs, because I have so many people who come into my program and say things like, I've always been a bigger person, or it's not safe for me to be skinny. I don't want you to be skinny. I want you to be strong. I want your body to be resilient. And these are pictures of me. This was in 2011. It's a headshot picture. I was about 145 pounds in that picture. This was a picture at Disney World, obviously during COVID. I was 172 pounds in that picture. And this is me 6 weeks after this picture was taken. I'm actually 140 pounds in this picture, which is a lot different than this 145-pound picture. And I was down to about 11% body fat. Insulin is one of the driving factors in our health, and most people don't ever get it tested. It attributes to aches and pains, weight gain, blood pressure issues, high cholesterol, mood changes, cancer and aging, hormone imbalance between your sex hormones, your stress hormones, and also low libido. And these are people who've done my program and had success. And you can see the time frames are not that big. So the gentleman up at the very top, that was a 6-week change. He went from 280 pounds down to 250 pounds in 6 weeks. The bottom corner is Melissa. She was able to drop 20 pounds in 6 weeks, where she had been stuck gaining weight for about 5 years. And then she's gone on to lose another 15 pounds by just paying attention to what her body feels like every day and supplementing appropriately. And then in the bottom corner, this is Daniel, day 13 to day 50. You can obviously see the changes. And it is the first time in his life he had ever really had any kind of abdominal muscles showing. So you've heard E equals MC squared, but I'm going to tell you that that actually applies to your mindset. So E is the emotional stability and your ability to respond instead of react in every situation. Your mental health is the M, and it's the ability to handle stress and move from emotion to emotion while still thriving and not getting stuck. It's perfectly okay to feel emotions. It is not okay to become the emotion. We need to move on from things that stress us out and make us upset, and do that with ease. Communication, learning how to express ourselves and our needs, and also listening to the needs of those around us. And then community. There's research on blue zones, and some of that is nutrition, but some of it, and the biggest part of it, was how connected they feel to their community. And looking at social media and the destruction of community and how people really have isolated themselves since COVID and continue to isolate themselves, and health has declined. This is the study on longevity and really looking at how community influence health more than diet and exercise and all of those things. So what about the genetics? using genetics to reduce rather than widen the disparities in health. Today, unprecedented advances in genetic-based diagnosis and treatment provide opportunities for personalized medicine. The disadvantaged groups may lack access to these advances and treatments based on research on non-Hispanic whites may not be generalizable to members of minority groups. So we really need to test the genetics on everyone and develop a plan for them specifically. And there's a guy who talks about genetics, and he talks about one set of genetics as being the most important, and he tests them for $550. But what I'm going to tell you is that you can get so much more. He tests line number 4 on this screen. I test for that same price all of this. For the same price that he's testing line number 4. So he's still widening that gap between groups. I'm narrowing that gap by testing the same thing plus 6 other areas for the same price. Samples of the reports. These are the genetics broken down and what categories they fall into. These are my results, and whether or not they're a low, non-impactful, medium, or high impactful process for you. The report is super simple to read. It gives you priority areas, it gives you supplementation recommendations, and it also gives you next steps that you might consider. It even tells you, and this, again, my genetic report, based on your diet, we recommend a low-fat diet as the best possible plan for you to manage your weight, but also cardiovascular health. And then I require a lot of high-intensity exercise to maintain my weight and my cardiovascular health. Not everyone requires this. Most people require somewhere between 16 to 20 Met hours of work, which, depending on the activity that you're doing, depends on what the Met hour qualifies as. And most of them, a low to moderate intensity. I don't have the best genetics, guys. I actually have to work at my health to make it work for me. We can also add on a test for medications. This is an additional cost than the $550, but for some people, this can be super valuable because there are things here in this report, for me specifically, that are common medications that are given that I would react very negatively to and could wind up actually potentially causing serious harm, including strokes. So there's also the DNA sport where we look at your potential as an athlete. And if you have kids that are having some health struggles, they're having some mental health struggles in school, I would highly recommend that you spend the money and get this test done so that we can start them down the right path immediately. We can also determine what types of athletic endeavors might be most beneficial to them and might be things that they actually enjoy because they're better suited for those things. And that's all that DNA sport test is included in the $550 genetic testing. We have to pay attention to hidden household toxins, and there are a lot of them. I'm not going to go over all of them, but make sure that the first thing you do is getting rid of any oil that is not avocado, olive, ghee, grass-fed butter, and for some people, not everyone, coconut oil or MCT oil. So what's the advantage of knowing your numbers in the basic blood work? Number one, it simplifies what we need to do with your nutrition, and your genetics also simplify what we need to do with your nutrition. Number two, the reports are easy to understand. My 10-year-olds were able to tell me what I needed to do based on my genetic results. They're now older than 10, but you get the point. It adds checkpoints. We can look at the numbers and see how we're shifting things based on supporting your genetics. And we're able to make huge impacts super fast in as short as 6 weeks. Now, I'm going to tell you, 6 weeks is not the end of most people's program. It's the start. But if you could change your cholesterol, your blood pressure, and your body weight in 6 weeks, would you sign up for that? And you could do it easily? I know I would, because spending 6 years doing it was awful. Other common things, we really have to get people away from the standard American diet, and we have to get them back at looking at what an actual portion size is. fasting for a minimum of 12 hours. And people say this is impossible, but really, we want to reach a 14 to 16-hour fast for most people. Restoring sleep, and also once a month, fasting for 72 hours, or if that's not possible for you because of some metabolic disorder like diabetes or PCOS, doing something like a fasting mimicking diet for 5 days. There's significant research on how important that is. And at the end of 3 months, what they show is that people who do that 3 months in a row consecutively, whether it's the 72-hour fast or fasting mimicking for 5 days, there are significant changes in their blood markers and significant changes in their overall health. Ways to get in touch with me are listed here. If you're interested in any of the material that I've shared, please reach out to me personally. I am happy to have you go through the consultation. If you've got basic blood work and you feel like people keep telling you it's normal, but you know you don't feel healthy, reach out to me. The easiest way is either my email or my website, 5280restorativemed.com, drmarcy@agilityphysio.com. Have a great day.